I'm going to kick us off here just before we get into a webinar that you are planning, I think, to join us for, which is focused on brevity with Todd Rogers from Harvard's Kennedy School. But before we get into that, let's just see who's in the room. We're going to do our two-word check-in. As you probably know, you go down into the bottom there, pull out the chat. You know what that looks like. Go ahead and type in your name, where you are. And Allison, you've already beat me to this, Passover prepping. We are in my house too. And then in 2 words, how are you? So let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. Looks like everybody else is already here. Hey, Kelly. Hey, let's see here. Anetta, Anna. Oh, good. Sandra. Oh, my goodness. Okay, you guys are already going way too fast. There's about 800 of us who signed up for today's session, so chances are there's a lot of us in here. If you see folks you know, go ahead and say hello. You know how this works. And in the spirit of moving fairly, oh, my goodness, look how many folks are here. Wow. All right, let's go ahead and go forward. My colleague Kareem is manning the deck for us, and you can probably see just below me, our friend Kenya is back. She's going to be offering ASL services. So huge props and gratitude to her. She will be pinned up while Todd is talking in case you should have need. And of course, there's always going to be closed captioning available for folks who might need it. You'll see that down in the bottom of your Zoom here as well. But let me stop yakking at you and tell you a little quickly about this. This is Slack. This is something our colleague Kareem helped us build. We've been after it now for the better part of a year, and there's now, oh goodness, over 2,200 network members who are chit-chatting with one another. Doesn't matter where you might be on the planet, what time it might be, there is always somebody available to help answer your questions or help you think through something or share some resources, all the rest of it. It's all really wonderful. So with that, let's move ahead, but you can find all of us there on Slack. In fact, we'll share the recording on Slack in short order. And this is Circles. This is actually a piece of or a program that runs inside of Slack for us. And you can see here from the video, the idea is we're trying to help you all build your kitchen cabinet inside the network because we all, frankly, probably have folks in the network who can be really, really helpful to us. And as you can see here, they get together every month for a Zoom call and chit-chat with one another in the in-between times on Slack. It's a huge resource. It's been tremendously helpful for the hundreds of folks who are participating. If you're a network member, hopefully that's you. And we're going to be expanding these. So let's go ahead and move to the next one. But Circles, if that's not on your horizon, it should be. As should this other wonderful program that we've been doing for the better part of, oh goodness, now 6-7 years, which is Com Network Local. And the idea here is, of course, there's chances are you live in an area where there's other folks doing work like you, doing communications for good foundations and nonprofits or consultancies that support those folks. And so it's super helpful to get to know all your neighbors, the folks who live in your area code, and building community with folks where you live and work. And that's what Locals is all about, as you can see from this great video. And if you're good at geography, you can see where that map takes us. It's all over the United States, and more are going to be coming together soon, in addition to all these that you see here. And now I get to tell you about a couple that are cooking in literally the next couple of weeks. And so the first one, our friends in New England gathering twice. They're going to be in Boston just this week, April 22nd. And then if you're up in the great state of Maine, where I went to school, May 9th, which is in Maine, that's considered April. All right, gang, let's move ahead. Next one. Detroit, April 24th. So that's also this week on Wednesday. Going to be gathering, or Thursday if I've got my dates right. They're going to be gathering up. Excited to see them. And look at all these wonderful faces. These are among the people you're going to meet. Our friends in New York, May the 7th, gathering up. And that's going to be fantastic. And I think we have one more, if I'm not mistaken. LA. And of course, here in the chat, you can see, gang, Tristan is posting all the links. So if you want to be part of this and get together, May 29th, our friends in Los Angeles will brave traffic to come together and visit with one another. Hope you'll be part of that. I think that was the last one we have cooking here. Yep. We do have a deadline today I want to tell you all about, and that is thanks to our friends at the Rockefeller Foundation, we are able to give seats away to join us at ComNet 24 in Kansas City this fall. If you are an academic or a nonprofit staffer with means, this is for you. And so honestly, if you're just hearing about this for the first time, our deadline is today at 5 o'clock. Shoot me a note. Maybe we can extend that for you if need be. But we will have the ability to bring dozens of folks to join us free of charge, thanks to our friends at Rockefeller and this Corel Scholarship. All right, with that, let's go. One more. Just a little note. We asked a number of you, chances are I was in your inbox last week asking you to take a poll. That is the first of 4 that we're going to do this year. And the idea is just let's all get a little bit smarter and better by asking each other, hey, what's going on across the field? So the first poll closed out on Friday. We're in the process of making sense of all that we heard from everybody, and we'll have the results back for you. Of course, the research working group you're seeing here, these are all lovely folks who helped us both craft the poll, and they're going to be working with across the year to make sure that we're doing something that's useful and helpful to everyone. All right, with that, I think I have the great good fortune of, one more. Coming up May 29th, we are going to have our next webinar. So mark your calendars and we'll send you an invite to this in short order. But we will be talking about LinkedIn, which seems to be the beneficiary of all the hullabaloo at Twitter or whatever we're calling that particular site these days. All right, with that, I have the pleasure and honor of introducing a friend of mine, Nora Delaney, who is a network member and also happens to have a really important job up at Harvard, not least of which is going to be introducing our presenter today. Nora, let me get out of your way and let you take a swing at this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you, everyone. I'm Nora Delaney. I'm a Senior Director of Communications at Harvard Kennedy School. And I'm so excited that Todd Rogers is going to be speaking here to this group. I'm a huge fan of his work. And you are in for a treat because he has practical and evidence-based guidelines to help everyone communicate more efficiently, no matter who your audience is. This ComNet community is an amazing community for sharing research, for sharing resources, and for learning. And I've learned so much at the events I've attended, and from my colleagues who are part of this group. And I'm super excited that you're all here today to hear what Todd has to say, and to learn how to communicate more effectively. So Todd Rogers is the Weatherhead Professor of Public Policy at Harvard Kennedy School. He's a behavioral scientist whose research has included things like improving school attendance, strengthening democracy, and most relevant for our audience, how to communicate more effectively. He's the co-author of Writing for Busy Readers with Jessica Lasky-Fink, and he's created an AI tool. It's really cool, and there's the book. It's a great book, by the way. I recommend it. It's a quick read, and it's awesome. And the AI tool is also great to use to revise your text based on his principles. Todd has co-founded two social enterprises, the Analyst Institute, which focuses on improving voter communications, and Everyday Labs, which partners with school districts to reduce student absenteeism. He's the faculty director of Harvard's Behavioral Insights Group and chair of the executive education program, Behavioral Insights in Public Policy. He's also a senior scientist at Ideas 42 and academic advisor at the Behavioral Insights team. Todd holds a PhD from Harvard and a BA from Williams College. And I'm so thrilled that he's going to be sharing his expertise and insights on writing for busy readers with us all today. Thank you so much, and let's all welcome Todd.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Nora. That was very nice of you, and it's good to see you. Can I confirm, Nora, can you confirm that you can hear me and see the slides the way you would expect to?
I can hear and see.
Okay, good, thanks. I'm really excited to share this work today. So here's the structure of what we're going to do. I'm going to be about 20 minutes of overview of some of the useful principles that we're going to be talking about, and then we'll have some Q&A, and then the team will introduce what I have not experienced, but I hear is very fun and interactive office hours afterwards. So I had shared the early stage of this work with this really interesting and useful network about 3 years ago, where my co-author and I, Jessica Lasky-Fink, we were starting to think about how do we write so busy people read, understand, and respond to what we write. The background is, as Nora was describing, I've done hundreds of randomized experiments on how do we communicate to busy voters. And then over the last 10 years, ran dozens, maybe approaching 100 experiments, randomized experiments on how do we communicate to busy families to try and get them to motivate and mobilize them to support kids outside of school, increase attendance. And then during the pandemic, started working with public leaders, communicators, communications offices, public and private sector on how do we communicate to busy stakeholders, constituents, whether it's staff, customers, elected constituents, team members, everyone. When in this world of virtual work, we write asynchronously and we communicate asynchronously in writing more often than we ever have. And how do we do that most effectively? Because I think we often feel the urge to be more comprehensive when we are asynchronous, when in fact, the more comprehensiveness can actually be less effective. So we're going to start with, and I know that we've got a little little interaction things, which I love, the hearts and laughs and whatever. Raise your hand or do some kind of interaction if you've ever been in a meeting where you said to somebody, wait, I don't understand. Didn't you read the thing? And there was a little bit of disappointment discussed because you had written the thing. A memo, you sent an email, you sent background, and they asked you a question. It was an FAQ, or it was a follow-up, or it was a phone call, it was an email, it was an in-person, and they hadn't read the thing that you put all this time into. Same thing going the opposite way. Has anyone ever said to you with mostly disgust in their face, didn't you read the thing? Right? And we've all experienced this, where we have to manage our limited time and our completely seemingly unlimited flow of words into our inbox, into our streams, into our Slack, into everything else. That's the problem we're trying to solve. How do we write so busy people read, understand, and respond to what we write? And so Jessica and I started by helping the many leaders and communicators we were working with be more effective. The goal is, how do we help you be more effective? You don't have to think long to realize it's also just kinder to write in a way that makes it easy for your reader to read, understand, and respond. If I was going to send Nora something that would take 4 minutes to read, but I could have written it in a way that would have taken 30 seconds or a minute, I have wasted her time. If she was going to read it, I just wasted her time, 3 to 3.5 minutes of it. In addition to being less effective, it's also unkind to write in a way that's not easy for readers. It's also less inclusive and accessible. So we're going to talk in a little bit about the reading level of adults in America. The median US adult, the 50th percentile, if you rank all adults and put the 50th percentile, the median US adult reads at a 9th grade reading level. And so when we write in inaccessible ways, when we write in these much more complicated ways, not only is it less likely people are going to read it, not only is it unkind to the people who do, it's also inaccessible and pretty exclusionary. One person actually wrote in one of the workshops that I do, lengthy or disorganized writing is disrespectful of the reader. So I just want to pause for a second. It's not even just a question of effectiveness, though it is about effectiveness. It's also about showing our readers respect. There are 6 principles. This is the book. There are 6 principles. I'm going to walk through 2 or 3 of them just very quickly. There are 6. You can get the full load. I'm also going to send out a checklist at the end of this workshop. I'll send out a PDF of a checklist. So it's a 1-pager. Unsurprisingly, it's pretty easy to skim. The first is less is more. And a student in the military, in the Navy, forwarded me this, which Jessica and I had not encountered when we were writing the book. And here's the context. You don't even have to read it. Here's the context. 1940, August. It's hot. They're in London. The Blitzkrieg is going on. It's the Battle of Britain. Britain is being bombed. Winston Churchill's the prime minister. He's in a bunker trying to scheme, how do we win this war while London is being bombed? And he decides that what he needs to do is write to his staff and the rest of the British military and say, and I'll read it here, to do our work, we all have to read a mass of papers. Nearly all of them are too long. He's trying to win a war. This wastes time while energy has to be spent looking for other things. I ask colleagues and staff to see that their reports are shorter. He's trying to win a war. I'm just trying to get people to read my emails. But same principle, writing too much is a burden and a tax on everyone else and can be less effective. I'll show you some randomized experiments that Jessica and I have run. Here's one where with some grad students, we scraped the email addresses of school board members, elected and appointed school board members around the United States. I wanted them to fill out a survey. No reason you should read this. I'll just go quickly. I'm a professor. Please fill out my survey. You're doing a difficult job. You're doing important work. It's profoundly impacting lives. I know you're busy, but not too busy for me to write all this. Your participation would be very helpful. Will you please fill out my survey? 127 words. We have 7,000. 3,500 get that one. 3,500 get, I just delete the whole middle section. I say, I'm a professor. Will you please fill out my survey? I'd like to learn from you. Please fill out the survey. We showed a couple hundred people both of these and had them predict. They didn't know this was not organized the way this talk is. This was not organized as less is more. So they didn't know what actually performs better at getting people to fill out the survey. And I asked them, which do you think will be more effective? The one that's very deferential and repetitively deferential and respectful, or shorter and in a way showing people's time respect? Almost everybody thought the longer, more deferential one would be more effective. We run the experiment, almost double response rates when we cut the words. I'm going to show you one more example of an experiment in this category. We have dozens, we have lots, not dozens, maybe a dozen. This is with a large, the United States political parties. There are two. One of those parties I have worked with extensively. The party at one point called me up, asked me if I would run an experiment with their email fundraising, and they have 750,000 donors on their list. And so they write this. Formatting is another one of the principles that we're not going to cover right here, but it's a crazy formatting. And they physically call me, so we don't have that much time to edit. And they're like, what experiment should we run? And I say, what if we just arbitrarily delete every other paragraph, right? So it's not even coherent anymore. We have people read both and they agree. The one on the right is less coherent. It's incoherent because we have arbitrarily cut paragraphs, every other paragraph. We run the experiment. They thought they were done with the one on the left, increased donations by 16%. The idea here is less is more, but we've only talked about two examples, but there are really three categories of less is more. This is the one you'll probably remember best, is just because this one's kind of funny. They're arbitrarily deleting every other paragraph, increased donations. But there are three kinds of less is more. Fewer words, which is like Strunk and White in their Elements of Style said, omit needless words. And so, yes, costless, cheap. Instead of saying in order to, you can just say to. Yes, easy, cheap, doesn't lose any content. Fewer words. Fewer ideas is the more subtle one, which is the more ideas we add, the less likely someone is to engage. And if they do engage, the less likely they are to finish it. And so there's just trade-offs. There isn't a right answer for how much content you need to include or cut. You just need to know that there's a trade-off. The more you add, the less likely someone is to read, understand, and respond. And then the third, less is fewer words, fewer ideas. And the third is fewer requests. We've run these experiments where when you add multiple requests, as opposed to just one, you decrease people's likelihood of doing any one of them, right? Which is, think about what happens when someone asks you for three things. Either you postpone, or you choose the easiest one to do first and then get distracted and derailed, or in the rare chance you start going, you get through all of them. But you have a lot of chance of postponing and getting derailed if you add lots of requests. Fewer words, fewer ideas, fewer requests, less is more. The second is design for navigation. So like the TLDR of this whole thing, too long didn't read, is that everyone is skimming. Everyone is busy, everyone is skimming. And their goal is to move on as quickly as possible from whatever it is you have sent them. So the second principle is design for navigation because everyone is skimming. Instead of cutting content, if you just make it easy to navigate, you can make it more likely that people actually pull the key info out. So we're going to do a little activity where this yellow bar is 8 seconds. And I want you to imagine being a busy person, like you are, in the middle of your workday. And you're between meetings, I'm going to grab my phone here. In between meetings, you're looking, you grab your phone and you look at it, you give an email 8 seconds. I'm going to give you 8 seconds. Everybody lean forward, check out this email. It's a realistic one. You'll recognize the kind of email that it is. Now, I want you to lean forward. You're going to get 8 seconds. Pull out whatever you can. See if you can figure out what the key information is. It's all 8 seconds is absurd. It's a ridiculous task. I get it. It's not your fault. It's just a ridiculous task. But I want you to pull out what you can, and then we're going to rewrite it as if we want to make it easy for readers. Okay, so this is an email you get in your inbox. You're going to hit 8 seconds. As soon as this yellow bar goes, you're going to go to the next slide. It's coming. Lean, and then I want you to enter in the chat what you pulled out of it. Here we go. Oh, you got extra time. I clicked a different button. All right. What did you get out of it? So you guys got about 10 seconds. So I see there's a breach, a cyber attack, complaints that there's too many words. what we're doing. We got hacked. I only read the bold sentence. Great. Nothing bold. It was really hard to skim. Hey, thank you. You didn't see a clear call to action. That's what a CTA. We need your help to fix something. Yeah. Breach. Okay, good. So if you look at what people entered, pretty similar things. I mean, ranging, but pretty common. A lot of people got cyber attack. A lot of people got what we're doing. A couple of people got one other element that I think the writer might think is the most important thing, which is right here. Immediately reset your passwords. Completely understandable that you didn't catch it. It's in the last paragraph. But if we look at this, look at the first paragraph, it's an intro. We've had an incident. Second is what's happened. There's been a breach. The third also is a part of that. And then the fourth paragraph, our priority. This is all like CYA, like what we're doing. Just so you know, we're doing our best. And then we get down to as part of our response plan. Now that's what you need to do. Okay, so how might we rewrite this in a way that makes it easier for skimmers without cutting any content? All the content's going to stay, but we want to add structure. How might we make it easier for skimmers? All right, so I see a bunch of people saying lead with a call to action. Great. How else might you add structure? There, I see Rachel saying headings and bullets. Good, that's what we're going to do. So here's a different way of writing the same message that takes into account both of the things you guys recommended, which is make the call to action up top and also add structure so it's easy to skim. Notice I have cut no words. It's exactly the same content. I've just rewritten it here. I'll show them next side by side. I've rewritten it. The formatting got a little tense there where it's all dense and hard to read. But what I've done is I've just added structure to make it easier for people to read. I also moved up to the top, the bottom line. I don't know if any of you are veterans. There must be veterans on here. What does bluff mean? Enter in the chat what bluff means. There it is, Alexis and Trishna. Good. Okay, we got a bunch of people who know it. Bluff is a U.S. Army regulation that has since spread to the rest of the branches of the military, where bottom line up front. In the military, if you are writing, the first line is the bottom line. And that means if you are a general writing to an enlisted person, first line is the bottom line. If you are an enlisted person writing up the hierarchy to the general, first line is the bottom line. It makes it unambiguous. This is how we write. It's an unambiguous norm that this is how we write. And it especially helps the lower status people and people who are newer to the organization who feel the most pressure to do a lot of throat clearing in the beginning about how much I admire your work. We ran into each other in Kandahar. You may not remember me, but I mentioned whatever. I love the work, whatever. All the grateful respect that often gets pushed up the hierarchy. You actually make it a lot easier for lower status writers to write in a way that makes it easy to read. It also makes it easier for writers and readers to know exactly where the bottom line is. It doesn't work everywhere because in some organizational cultures, it comes off as too aggressive. If we've never emailed before and I email you something saying, I want you to fill out this form, and then I say who I am, it might come off as just way too direct. So it doesn't work everywhere, but here it does. Bottom line up front and added structure to make it easier for skimmers. The big picture is that everyone is skimming. I don't know if I'm going to show you these experiments. Oh, I think I am actually. Good. We run experiments on this. Oh, no. Let me see. I'm going to pop out and see if I can add. No, I didn't do it. We've run experiments where we'd have newsletters that have text like maybe on the left, and then we add another condition, an A/B test, where we add headings to the text. And we find that we more than double the likelihood that people get past the third paragraph when they see that there's headings. Basically, they know that it's easy to jump around. You allow and enable people to scan the document. Second principle, design for navigation because everyone skims. So the idea is, if everyone is going to skim, how do we make it easier for skimmers to read, understand, and respond? The third is make reading easy. This starts with understanding what does it mean to be difficult or easy to read. This is like grade level reading for those of you in education. And shorter words are easier for people to read. Words like use are better than utilize. Familiar words are better than unfamiliar words. Words is better than verbiage, for example. Simpler, shorter sentences. So my favorite thing that we learned while writing this book was the eye tracking research, where when people are compelled to read, they go word, 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 and then they stop at the period. It's called the period pause effect. Watch yourself read next time. And we just do it automatically. And what happens is the longer a sentence is, the longer you have to pause to synthesize, because the idea is over. You need to make sure you understand it. And the longer the sentence, the longer you have to pause, and the more likely you have to regress, meaning go backwards and reread it because you didn't get the full sense. If you can make it easy to read in one pass through, it's cognitively easier. More people will be able to understand it. It also takes less time. Language, obviously, writing in the language people prefer to speak in and read in is better. But here's a table that I like showing from the Literacy Project of just like translating what we understand of American adult literacy into things that are a little bit more meaningful. So the median US adult, like we were talking about, is a high school freshman reading level. The level at which we expect a high school freshman to read, that's the 50th percentile of US adults. 20% of US adults read at a 5th grade reading level or lower. So when we write in these complicated sentences, that last email that we wrote, that we read about a cyber attack, that was written at a college graduate reading level. So it would be inaccessible to the vast majority of Americans. But the idea is it's not just that it's inaccessible to a big chunk. Even those who can understand it are less likely to engage because it's just cognitively taxing. It just requires more effort. And when they do engage, they're more likely to give up because they've got so many other things on their list and it's just cognitively taxing. The idea is the easier we make it for our readers, the more likely they will be to read, understand, and respond. This sign is a real sign in a real city. The Center for Plain Language, which in 2010, the United States Congress passed a bill called the Plain Language Act, mandating plain language in government communications. Too specific in some places, under specific in others. We kind of think of our work as now the science is caught up. Like, what does it mean to make it easy and plain? And that's what the checklist is. But this sign from the Center for Plain Language that was born out of that movement won the WTF award, which is an award that they would give out to signs that were kind of incomprehensible. Now, WTF means words that failed. Obviously, words that failed, the WTF award. I'm watching these little emojis. I don't know if you get to see them. I'm not sure what the reactions are and whether a joke lands. The WTF award. The sentence here is, person shall remove all excrement from pets pursuant to some law. There are a couple things that might happen. One is I read it, I see persons, and I just I don't understand what this thing is going to be about. I can't understand what it means. So it's inaccessible. Or I can understand it. It's just so taxing and offensively difficult to read that I skip it. Like, very unlikely someone's going to read it closely enough to understand it. So I want you to enter in the chat. How would you rewrite this? Good. And once you've written it, check out what your colleagues here are putting in. I do think it's worth noting some people keep the 2000 in, some people don't. I don't think there's a right answer for that because it just depends what your theory is about what's going to motivate people to pick up their dog's poop. These are all good. Pooch's poop. I didn't even think of that one. I don't know how they will figure out. Maybe you're being observed. If your dog poops and you don't pick it up, you'll get fined. Oh, pup, pick up poop. Maybe that's another military acronym. I don't know. Okay, so here's how Jessica and I rewrote it. We wrote, scoop your pet's poop, fine up to $2,000. And then we figured that the law number was probably a requirement, some kind of disclosure that even the person who wrote the law wouldn't even know what that means, but that was probably required. Notice also that we used formatting here and structure to drive home the key message. You can't look at this and think that we think the most important item is the law number. You look at this and you think the writer is telling you the most important item is scoop your pet's poop. That's one way that we can use writing to reinforce the key message, but we have to be clear. You can't write effectively if you don't know what the most important message is. You can't write effectively for busy readers without knowing first what your goal is. It's sort of stage 0 of all of effective writing, is being clear on your goal. One of the reasons we write so much is that we haven't prioritized. Okay, so these are the 3. Less is more, design for navigation because everyone skims, make reading easy. There are 3 other principles that you'll have to read the book and or read the checklist, which is right here. I'm going to send out over the chat the checklist. Right here. Oh no, what have I done? Okay, boom. There we go. Here's the checklist. I'll send it out over the chat to everyone. There. It's also on our website. But the idea here is it makes it easy for people to use the principles. And you'll see that under each of them, there's a bunch of sub-principles because we've got lots of research across different categories. One thing that there is not a right answer for most questions. It all depends on the context, the expectations your reader has, the norms you have within your organization, the mode of communication, whether it's a website or a memo or a report or an evaluation or an email or a fundraising letter, the expectations, the norms, and your goals. But the idea is everyone is busy, everyone is skimming. And so how do you make it easier for the reader? Because the easier you make it for the reader, the more likely they will be to read, understand, and respond. I do workshops like this all the time for Navy, Army, life insurance companies, banks, Office of Management Budget, FBI, like lots of federal agencies, state agencies, and other networks. So if you think something broader than this would be useful, reach out. But I also want to show you the AI tool that Nora was referring to. And then we will take questions. I'm going to share here. There we go. Okay. Well, the first thing I'll do is I guess I'll add the AI tool to the chat if you are interested. Right there. But here's how it works. On our website for the book, you go to Writing for Busy Readers. And then we have this. So we train GPT-4, OpenAI's latest large language model, on the principles, the checklist we just gave you, and some more. And then we tuned it with pre-post examples of emails. We're like, this is a before, this is edited, this is before. So this is tuned for emails. And then I'm going to paste just a bad email in here. All right, so dear team, I hope everyone's doing well. We need to do better in our meetings. Before meetings, please do these things. During meetings, please do these things. After meetings, please do these things. If we do this, we'll all be better. Okay, so it's 346 words. And so now what we'll do is we'll write it in a way that makes it easier for skimmers. It's not summarizing it. It's not cutting ideas. What it's doing is it's turning it into a skimmable format. All right, there we go. So it's cut the words by 2/3. And it's now, if it's before the meeting, I can go to preparation. If the meeting has already happened, I can just know where to jump. And this AI tool, we just passed 100,000 users after a few months. You can hit it a bunch of times and you can see different versions. I don't like what it does with the bolding. We're still trying to tell it to stop doing crazy bolding, because basically what you really want with regards to format, since we're about to take questions, with regards to formatting, what you want to do is you want to make sure that the reader knows what the formatting means. And readers interpret bold, underline, and highlight as the writer saying to the reader, this is the most important content. But if you use lots of kinds of formatting, and so what we've seen in experiments is that if you do that, if you bold, underline, highlight, readers will jump to it, but it will also license readers to not read anything else. And so one of the big trade-offs that you have to make is when you use this kind of formatting, it licenses people to not read anything else. And so you have to be really clear what's the most important element. But also when you start using lots of kinds of formatting, it just confuses readers. In addition to being kind of unattractive to read, it's just unclear what italics means if you also have bold and you also have underline, which one is the most important? What am I supposed to interpret? So generally, the heuristic we use is you should use one type of formatting and use it consistently and not lots of kinds. But with that, I think I will close with, before taking questions, I will close with what I think is like the big takeaway. The big takeaway is everyone is skimming and everyone is busy. And the easier we make it for our readers, the more effective it'll be, the kinder it'll be, and the more accessible and inclusive it is. So we should add a round of editing to everything we write where we ask ourselves, how do I make it easier for the reader? Okay, with that, I thank you to the Com Network team for letting me share this work. I'm psyched to take questions and answer questions. And I think Sean is going to moderate.
We have a couple, yeah.
Good. Okay.
Let's jump in, gang. Just to give you a flavor, I am looking in the Q&A box. You know this from the Zoom life. I'm going to start an anonymous person. Oh, okay. We'll take it anyway. I'm always hesitant to use bold, italics, underlines, or color in case people receive their email messages plain text. Is that an outdated thought?
I mean, I work with a lot of different government agencies, and especially in the military, they do that by default. They don't even permit any of the, I don't know what you call it, hypertext or something. No, I don't think so. I mean, it's just a trade-off. It actually prompts this like meta point that I and Jessica have been moving towards, which is, as organizations and teams and groups, we should probably just be having explicit discussions. How do we write? How should we write? What norms should we have? Instead of just letting them happen to us and evolve unsupervised over time, having just explicit discussions like how would you like us to write as a team? And what happens there is that things like that can start being resolved. Like, well, I read my email this way, so don't, whatever. It could be in a dyadic communication, like Sean and I, over time, if we communicate enough, I'll probably just ask you, real question. Sean, if I have 5 things for you, do you want them all in one message, or do you want them in 5 separate messages?
One message, but I don't want 50,000 words, please.
Yes. But so Jessica and I disagree on this. I want them all in one. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I want them in 5 different messages because I can manage my workflow by deleting them once I've done them. Mm-hmm. But you like them all on the same. We did a survey on this. 75% of people are with you and with Jessica. 25% are with me and me alone. I guess me and 25% of people. But like if people have different preferences, if you want to make it easy for them, you want to make it easier for them. And so this is where communication, actual interpersonal communication about our norms and expectations, can be explicit discussions, can be really helpful.
Seems to me there's also an element of trust here, right? Particularly if you're having these conversations, but this idea of through your communications, presumably one of the things you're hoping to do is build trust. So I presume when you write long, dense, hard to make sense of emails, you are breaking trust.
It's
not yours.
It depends. So I was working with an organization that had a norm. Actually, I don't even need to tell a story. I wrote a book, and I thought it could have been a 1-pager, which is why we have a checklist that I share with you. Although you should all buy it. It's a great book. Makes a great graduation gift. But the book is 200 pages because a book has to look like a book, and so it wouldn't have worked as a checklist. And honestly, we can't go through the research and the underlying rationale behind each of the things and the FAQs and whatever. But a book needs to look like a book. And so context, this is why there are a lot of approaches where people are kind of dogmatic about how something is supposed to be written. It just depends on what your audience expects, even within those constraints. So like gender, women are read differently than men. It's inequitable. It's unfair. Women are expected to have more gratuitous, emotional expressions, more exclamation marks, things like that. It's unfair and it's inequitable. It exists in some settings. And so given those constraints, you know your audience, you know the norms, you know the expectations. Within those constraints, how do you make it easier for the reader? And different writers are read differently. But the goal is within those constraints, how do you make it easier for the reader?
Next question coming in, lots of folks voting for this said, I work with academics, not you though, Todd, who are stubbornly insistent on nuance and text-heavy language. How can I convince them of these principles? What's the data that will help me make the case?
Well, it's all in the book. For real. It's like that's what has been fun about and surprising about this research program and this book is that people are occasionally, something like I say like 2 to 5% of people in any audience get really turned on, and they're like, I have been fighting about this my entire career, and people always dismiss it as a matter of taste, when it's not just about taste. It's also about effectiveness, because people are just not going to read it. Like that's the default behavior, is skipping over whatever it is we write. So I don't know that it depends. Let's make up a context, because I don't have enough details for that question. But if it is practical communication, like HR stuff or grant related stuff or research revision stuff or editorial things or research protocols, the easier it is to read, the more likely they will be to read it. If you're trying to get change the way they write, honestly, that's been. Like you point them to the checklist and the book, but also like there's like I think everyone's moving in this direction. As we move towards remote work, more of our work takes place asynchronously in writing, and so it becomes all the more urgent that we become more effective at writing, so it's easy for our readers, because there's so much more reading that has to happen.
Would you say there's a generational element to this? So folks who, maybe they're not quite digital natives, but have spent a lot of their lives reading on the web, have a different aptitude or attitude towards this than maybe, not to pick on some of your colleagues, but maybe a Harvard professor who's been there and got tenured in 1974. Let me sure that person.
Well, I want to make congratulations for living so long.
Yes,
for whoever that person is.
100%.
Yes, there are definitely going to be generational differences in how people read. That said, everyone is busy and everyone is trying to move on. Like it is humbling and hilarious to take seriously the possibility that everyone's goal when they open anything you send them is to move on as quickly as possible. And so however they read and wherever they are, most often their goal is to move on.
And actually, as I say that, I'm immediately reminded, as I ask the question, Winston Churchill was begging for this in 1940. So it's not like it's that much of a generational. It's just been a long-standing problem for a good long while.
Yeah, but the generational thing is worth. I do want to maybe it's a little like academic, but I think it's really interesting. People often ask about attention span, like over time. First off, I don't know. We're writing for right now, and so we don't have to write to people in the 1970s. But that said, it's possible that attention span hasn't changed. What's changed is the cost of moving on to the next thing is much lower. And so it used to be that if you were reading, I read academic articles. If I was reading an academic article, I went and got it in the library, and it took me, between 4 and 40 minutes to find it, and then I have it. If I move on to the next thing, I'm another 4 to 40 minutes away from my next item. Whereas now, if I Google search, I'm about 5 seconds away. And so the search costs are so much lower. So we spend much less time with any one thing, because the expected value of the next best thing doesn't have to be that high, because we can just move on really quickly. So it's just like we live in a world where the switching costs are so low that unless you earn a lot more of their time, they're going to move on. And the way I situate what we're talking about here is not just, there is a different game of how do you earn more of their time, by like teasing and being something intrinsically valuable that they value. But a lot of the time we're just communicating something practical, and I don't know how to earn more of your time. In that case, how do I make it as easy for you to pull the key information out before you give up? And also disclose, sometimes, you add structure so you can have more detail. In our lab, we have a rule that no email can be more than 4 sentences. And what that turns into is, Sean, thanks for having me on today. Attached or below, you will see a description of all the research we did on that topic. If you have any questions, let me know. Right? So it's not like I can't put any content in. I just want you to immediately know what's here.
Makes a lot of sense. And speaking of immediately knowing what's here, one of the questions we got was, do email subject lines play any role in helping structure information? Are they effective or arbitrary? Like, is it more about who's sending it, or do the subject lines really matter and help people?
Who's sending it matters, but I can't control I'm always me. But so putting aside, yes, like, an email from your personal friend, Joe Biden, is more likely to get read than an email from your personal friend, Todd. But that said,
Oh, no, no, wait a minute.
there,
I'm pretty sure I got an email from both of you recently. I know I read yours because we were doing some business. I think the other one was trying to shake me down for money or something. Or some
yeah,
other.
I don't understand. Joe's always asking for money. I don't understand. They're
Ray-Bans are expensive.
okay. Speaking of politics, this is a story that I know Nora has heard me tell. Is that so? In a different life, I started a research institute called the Analyst Institute in Washington, where we translate behavioral science insights into political strategy. We ran Obama's experiments teams, and it's sort of the hub on the left of data science and behavioral science. And one of the things in 2008 that the Obama campaign was so like widely known for is being one of the first email fundraising apparatuses. We were not involved in that. And if anyone wants to enter it in the chat, what do you think the most successful email subject line of all time was to this day? You can enter in the chat if you want. It's a subject line sent by the Obama campaign. And it is not, yes, we can. There it is, Chris. Except it was all lowercase HEY. Now, like, why is because it's such an informal message. Who else would send that but your personal friend, Barack? And so at the time, it got past that first gate, which is, do you open it at all? But then by 2010, everyone started using impersonal subject lines, personal subject lines like that. And so it stopped being effective because you knew you were being tricked. There's an ethical question of like, if you're capturing attention by making them think you're someone that you aren't, like, I'm going to put down that you shouldn't be doing that it's unkind to your readers, and in equilibrium, eventually it's bad for you. But so that being said, there isn't a single like right format. It depends what everything else is in your inbox. I think it's good for readers and it's good for us as writers if the subject line gives guidance on what's in the message. That's usually, then it's like, well, how do you write it most effectively? Fine. But as long as we stay in the constraints of making it even easier for the reader to know what's in there, is the way I think about it.
No, that makes sense. If you were in the military and you wrote your general a note and it said, "Hey," you have some challenges, I would think.
I bet Winston Churchill was prolific. I bet we could find. I don't know that his memos to his military.
British was "yo," right? Back in the 40s, I think that was the formal term for getting somebody's attention at Oxford. Yo.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Our friend Jamie asks, how do you win over the skeptics? So some folks respond to ideas that people skim, want to read less, attention span data with sadness. That is, people don't want to read anymore and push us to keep hard to read text. I've even heard of making things easier to read is insulting to readers or less prestigious. Are you like the most hated man at Harvard? Is that true? You have to put on the $75 words in order to have any kind of status or stature?
Sure, I guess you can tell them that your friend Todd at Harvard says not to. This is why the evidence is so useful. And everyone can relate to the problem of, didn't you read the thing? Like every single person has experienced being on both sides of it. And when you're on the side where they ask you, didn't you read the thing? Very often you'll generate exactly the list of things that's on the checklist about how could you expect me to read that? It was so dense. It was so long. It was unclear when I looked over what the point was. It was hard to take the action, right? And so I don't think it's hard to convince people that if we struggle to communicate effectively. Then there may be some nostalgic view about how we used to read more in the past. I predict that we also didn't read a lot of things in the past too, like all the books that are sitting on our shelves, even from college, that we didn't read in college. So I don't know. So practically, I think you talk about the evidence, like the goal is effectiveness, and it's pretty convincing just to say it's almost surprisingly tautological. Like it's almost surprisingly obvious. If we make it easy for our readers, they're more likely to read and understand and respond. And then they can say, well, I wish it wasn't that way. Yeah, there are a lot of things I wish weren't that way. But there's a different angle of criticism of this, which is like from Cal Newport kind of perspective of like deep work and like we're encouraging or facilitating or conforming or submitting to this culture of superficial reading. Fine. Okay. I mean, the way I think about it is I have practical things I'm trying to communicate to you. And honestly, I want to free you up to do the things, to spend your limited time and attention on the things that you find fulfilling. And I'm pretty sure that my like update on our recent project is not the most fulfilling part of your day. And so I think of it as like we're just trying to free people up so that we don't burden their attention if they do read it. But more likely the problem is they're not reading it at all. So we're even just trying to get in there.
A couple more. This is prompting a lot of questions. Crystal asks, what do you tell communications people who resist using these principles in their press releases?
See, I think it really depends on the expectations of your reader. Now, I don't know. I'd love to do experiments on press releases, but I think so work me through this, Sean. Make up a press release idea and who's the audience?
Press release would be I'm trying to pick on a school. I'm
at a university that issues a lot of press releases.
All right. So at a Boston area school, there is a notice that everyone's going to get free ice creams, and they want to alert the Boston Herald. Is that still around? I know the Globe is. All right, whatever. They ship out to all of the local newspapers some announcement that there's going to be something happening on the campus of a Boston area college at 3 p.m. There's a bunch of quotes from people who will be participating that presumably suggest to you the quotes you would get if you went to the thing. But if you didn't go to the thing, you can just grab the press release and toss those into your remarks, right? That's
okay.
Principle. That's the idea. It's the event in a box with a few quotes from smart people who are involved.
Okay, I like that. I also, seeing the chat, I do like Kelly's idea of write to others the way you want to be written to. I think that I like that. I'm going to actually thank you. I may or may not be able to remember to credit you at all times, Kelly, but I'm going to, while being recorded, publicly declare thank you. I'm going to rip that one. I like that. I will try to credit you. On the press release, you have to write, I think that's the structure I would have expected. You're writing to, you're issuing it widely, but there's really 4 reporters you hope read it.
Right.
And the reporters I know say that they rarely read these press releases closely and that they're inundated with them.
As a former journalist, I can testify all of those things are true.
Right. And so, but you also need it to look like a press release is supposed to look. Like you can't send it the way my email tool would have edited it. That just looks like bizarre. Maybe it would capture more attention at first, but it also just looks like you're unprofessional.
Well, it actually depends, right? Because there's actually a feature, and journalists know this. There's the day books, which is literally a list of events, which is the who, what, where, when, right? And all the logistics that you might need to know if you want to cover a presumable newsworthy event. And the press release, in a way, I suppose, is cheating for all those folks who might not get out to the event. So they can write the piece without having actually participated or attended or gotten more deeply engaged.
Yeah. Okay. So I would, making sure you conform to what it's supposed to look like, I would add structure. Like it sounds like the quotes are a lot of words, but they can be useful to the reader if they're going to write a piece for you. So I would add structure and then have like quotes so that they know that they're an offset, just like that letter we looked at, so that it's just easier. And you want that, a 2-sentence summary up front. It took me a couple of months of working on this before I realized academic articles are actually like surprisingly well written for busy readers, which no one has ever said before. But like they're incredibly well structured.
Yeah, walk me through this. Is this because
they're super well structured. There's an abstract, which is a summary. There's a title. There's an abstract. So 12 words, 200 words. And then for you who might not be familiar with it, maybe it's just one dense morass of words. But for me, the intended audience, if I want to know how they did the statistical test, I know exactly where to go in it. If I want to know what study 2 looked like, I know exactly where to go. Like it's super easy. If I want to know whether they cited me, I know exactly where to go. I'm just sort of they're super easy to navigate because they all conform to the same structure. And so that surprise, the writing itself is often impenetrable. That's not, but the structure is really easy. So you asked about the press release. Within bounds of what's acceptable, I would just add the structure so it's easier for people to skim, and I would write the sentences so they're easy to read.
And I would add, make sure that it actually has news in it. If it's a press release, not everything that you do is news, unfortunately. I think that's the challenge people are bumping into. It may not be a formatting challenge at all. It may simply be, you ain't got nothing to say, right? Like, unfortunately, that sometimes happens. I am mindful of the time. Let's take one more, and then we'll go into office hours, gang. So for those who want to stick around, Todd has generously said he'll stick around for an extra 30 minutes. Kareem will put the link into the chat so everybody can get primed for this. But for now, our friend Anetta, I think, if I'm pronouncing this properly, says, at what point do you decide that multiple emails are necessary, because you have too much content for one?
I'm just going to end with the checklist so people know while we're...
Thank you.
Honestly, I don't think that there is an ironclad rule on this. Like, it depends on context. And the context is, what are your goals? What are the norms what are the norms for this kind of communication? And what are the expectations of the reader? And so I don't know. It depends. I work with one federal agency that writes these reports, and then they have a congressionally mandated, like, highlight section, and that has become so long because Congress keeps adding to it. They now have a summary on top of the highlights on top of the report, because it's just this sort of like this stack of, if you want more, it's almost like a physical hyperlink. If you want more, go down to the next level. And so I love the idea if we're really wrestling with how much is too much information, because you really are. Often there's multiple audiences, or you want a historical record, and so you want to have all the content in there, then you can just make it structured so that it's all below the fold, or it's details below, or whatever. But you just want to make it, the idea is, and it really depends on context and your creativity, like writing so that it's easy for the reader, but you also achieve whatever goals you have.
Information design is a huge, huge element of this.
Yeah.
All right. And we're going to answer this. Victoria, our friend Victoria Beal asks, what does semicolon DR mean? You want to reveal this to her?
Sure. It is. Did I say it without saying what it means?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, good.
Maybe.
Oh, good. I'm sorry if I did. I try to say TLDR followed by, which means too long didn't read. It is it's something that came up in internet speak of too long didn't read, but it's kind of a sarcasm. But then it became co-opted as TLDR colon a summary of whatever if you're not going to read this, here's a summary. But it is worth like flagging. That's the practical use. People say, instead of summary, they'll jokingly say TLDR colon here's what the summary is. But there is a difference between summarizing and making it easier to read. Like, you don't have to cut words or cut ideas to make it easier to read. You just need to make, the sentences easier to read, use formatting to reinforce your purpose, add structure, emphasize why the reader might care. And if you're asking for a response, make it easier. I just walked through the checklist. But with that, Sean and the rest of the Com Network team, I love this community. People, Nora, thanks for introducing me, and Sean, thanks for having me on. And can you tell them how we're going to do this office hours?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, gang, and everybody's been jumping in here. First of all, huge props to Kenya. Kenya, if you're not able to see the chat, lots of people offering.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Kenya.
Appreciation. And Kareem has just once again put it in there. So for those of you who want, we're going to be talking about this for another 30 minutes. And I promise you, Todd, we didn't even get close to most of the questions. So there's more to chat about. We will see you all over there in a minute or two. All right, gang, we'll see you there.